As if there may be a break in the fighting in Syria later this week, the UN mediator was today sounding coyly optimistic about a ceasefire for the Muslim festival of Eid on Friday. It doesn't necessarily indicate the dictator, Bashar al-Assad, is about to fall. The endgame still looks far off. Now, most television coverage of the civil war tends to concentrate on the guns and the blood, the anger and weeping. But what's it like to live there? Well, our reporter Tim Hewell has just spent the best part of a week in a town in the north of the country. So, where'd you go, Tim?
Well, there's a whole swathe of countryside in northern Syria along the Turkish border that is now rebel-controlled as far down as the city of Aleppo, where, of course, there's been intense fighting going on for the last couple of months. And there's one border post near the Turkish town of Kilis where you can actually go in officially now and get your passport stamped with the stamp of Free Syria. So that's what the Newsnight cameraman John Hughes and I did. And what we wanted to find out was how the rebels are running their territory and what kind of Syria they want in the future. We went to the town of Mara, which is just north of Aleppo. In normal times it has about 30,000 people, but quite a lot of them have fled. It was one of the first towns in northern Syria to demonstrate against Assad, and it's the hometown of one of the main commanders in the battle for Aleppo. And this is what we found. Welcome to Mara, a small town at war. There's bravado and real heroism here. Death, so frequent they dig the graves in advance. A numbing fear of the enemy in the sky. And a very good pastry shop. The story of Mara's liberation from tyranny is drenched not only in blood, but also in syrup and honey. Ibrahim Najjar's sweets were the death of regime soldiers who stole them on April the 10th, their last day in Mara.
When the army came, my brother and friends decided to put poison into the sweets, and the soldiers who ate them died. The people of Mara are proud of what we did. We even became famous because of it.
That day, Mara burned. Hundreds of houses and shops set alight by phosphorus grenades hurled by government troops. They ransacked the homes, looted whatever they could, and rode away on their tanks, never yet to return. Mara was left as a dusty island of freedom to plan its own future. 19 months on, the Syrian uprising remains strangely faceless, with no clear overall leadership and, many feel, no clear aim beyond the overthrow of President Assad. I've come to this liberated town to try to discover who's fighting and what they're fighting for. Guarding Mara and ruling it are the rebels of the Free Syrian Army. They're led in this town by a former electrician wounded in the battle for Syria's second city, Aleppo.
I was shot with a machine gun. The bullet went in my back and came out from my stomach.
His men are poorly armed with whatever weapons they can capture from the regular army. Machine guns like this, unlikely to bring down a plane. Their power comes from the charisma of commanders like Abu Raed. He built this battalion from a group of friends. Like him, they're mainly poor men, a farmer, 2 tailors, a blacksmith, 2 teachers. And they're fighting not just for freedom, but for social justice. Not just against Assad, but against a whole urban class in Aleppo who've backed him.
Most of the rich people, their business is running well. They've got connections. They've grown prosperous with the regime.
So what will happen to those people in the future?
They won't stay in Syria afterwards. They will run away of their own accord.
And these men don't want to be robbed of the fruits of victory when the war's over.
The leadership will be made up of people inside Syria. We won't accept some exiled opposition figure who sits in 5-star hotels while people are fighting on the ground. We lost brothers, uncles. Do you think we will let people living outside come back to rule us? No. We have a saying, The land is for those who work on it.
But for now, it's the regime that still rules the skies. And at any sign of a plane, all eyes turn upwards. This is the random destruction the jets bring. Increasingly unable or unwilling to commit ground forces to the fight, the regime's resorting to indiscriminate aerial bombardment. The aim's simply to sow terror. This was one of Marà's secondary schools, closed like most schools here for more than a year, but still intact until a bomb hit it.
The fighter jets attacked, then they went away. Then they came back and attacked again. They hit the school on both sides.
At the cemetery, I meet a man coming to tend the grave of his son.
My son was with 5 or 6 friends, loading potatoes onto a truck, and a MiG-23 dropped 2 barrels of TNT on them. 5 were killed. The oldest of them was just 16 years old, and 3 others had their legs and arms blown off. Were they terrorists? No. The only terrorists are Bashar al-Assad and his friends. I won't even call them unbelievers. They're worse than animals.
Behind us, another funeral's beginning. Today they're burying a man hit by machine gun fire from a plane as he drove his car through the town. But suddenly, the mourner's attention turns from earth to sky. Far off, a helicopter's approaching. Till it eventually changes course, they too are threatened with death. Spared this time, but perhaps not the next. Yasser al-Haji grew up in Marà, moved abroad, and returned last year to join the revolution. He thinks the town's being punished for its activism.
It's an act of revenge because we were demonstrating all the time. Marà, one of the first cities to demonstrate and keep protests all the time. And it's an economic war too. So they want to make everything poorer and to punish people for demonstrating. So it's me in Marà 83. I used to be the captain.
3 decades ago, when Yasser led the town football team, the regime seemed impregnable. Now civil wars torn through a group of friends who were once Aleppo provincial champions.
The guy, he's the mayor of the town right now.
So he joined the party, the Ba'ath Party?
Yeah, he's a member of, he's a strong supporter of the Ba'ath Party. The other guy, he's a major, retired major from the army, this guy, he worked for the political intelligence office.
Oh, so he's on the other side?
On the other side, and he's still on the other side.
In Marà Town Hall, extraordinarily, Yasser's old teammate is still in office, much to his disgust.
أنا سيارتي أخذ لي إياها الجيش الحر هي السيارة. الرشوة هي ما له علاقة فيها، لا الدولة ولا بشار ما له علاقة. نحن سيئين، الرشوة سيئة من أنفسنا. من هون من رئيس البلدية وأنت طالع. شايف؟ رئيس البلدية مرتشي، المكتب الفني مرتشي، القصر العدلي مرتشي، الموظفين إيش عرفوا بشار أسد في دول مرتشين؟ بس سكر الباب لو سمحت. سؤال. هل بس خد أنت ناولين شيء من ورا. سؤال. هلا الجيش الحر مين المسؤول؟ أنت اللي عم برتشوا. أنت مدير دائرة والناس عم ترتشي في دائرة. طيب إذا شلت واحد ورجعت حطيت واحد ثاني طلع كمان مرتشي. مين إصلاح على الموظفين لا على القيادة؟ على الدولة. على الدولة ككل وقت بنساعد نحط إيدنا في إيد بعض. لا ما اشتغل.
The mayor's allowed to stay for now because of his connections. He can phone government authorities in Aleppo and get salaries or fuel delivered across the front line. But does he still really believe in President Assad?
Yes, Bashar al-Assad is a Democrat. He loves his people, though he may have changed now. But after he took power, he made a lot of reforms. Workers' salaries went up from 4,000 Syrian pounds to 25,000.
And you're not afraid to say that when President Assad's planes are bombing this town?
Personally, I feel scared for my people, my wife and children, but we are stuck between 2 sides. The planes that fire indiscriminately, killing women and children, and on the other side, the FSA which has kidnapped my son. Both sides are oppressing us.
In Mara, poor, rural, entirely Sunni Muslim, few others are so ambivalent, though many are down the road in richer, more mixed Aleppo. Small towns like this, old-fashioned, pious towns where women, for example, are rarely glimpsed, have had to take the fight to the big city, but that may only make the city fear the uprising all the more. This remains a deeply conservative Islamic society, even after more than 40 years of rule by the secular Ba'ath Party. But not all Syria's like this, and many are afraid that if and when the regime collapses, another fight will break out as one part of the country tries to impose its values on others. The proceedings in this dark room offer perhaps a glimpse of Syria's future. Rarely filmed before, this is rebel justice at work. A revolutionary committee of civil lawyers and Islamic law experts are trying 3 suspected tea smugglers brought in by a rebel soldier. Eventually, the suspects are provisionally let off after swearing on the Quran. Minor disputes have long been dealt with like this. But will Islamic practice now become more important?
Sharia law should come first, because Sharia is a form of justice that has proved itself for 1400 years. But we should graft other laws onto it to make it suit all communities, including minorities.
In this town, it certainly feels as though the FSA belongs to the people. There's no sign here of the foreign Islamist fighters the West is increasingly concerned about. And these rebels say they have no Islamist agenda themselves. Syria will stay as multi-confessional as it's always been.
God willing, after the regime falls, we will all work together in love and brotherhood. Christians, Kurds, Sunnis, and even Alawites, at least the good ones. We hope they will listen to what we are saying and join us.
But Western powers won't help because they don't believe that.
We get very little outside support, no humanitarian aid or weapons, like the media claims. Only God's with us.
Everyone is against the Syrian people. Only Turkey and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states are on our side. So firstly, we want God to help us, then those countries.
But won't those countries, those Arab countries, demand a political price for their support? Won't they try and change Syria?
No. They are trying to help us because we have been oppressed for 40 years, because we are poor. That's all. They don't expect anything in return.
But Mara's rebels belong now to the Tawhid Brigade, a wider formation that's led the battle for Aleppo. Many believe it gets greater funding from Saudi Arabia and Qatar because of its Islamist sympathies. And as long as the FSA has no overall command structure, it's the best armed groups that will gradually become the most influential. Since Yasser al-Hajji returned here last year, he's seen the revolution grow from a baby into a fighter. Now he fears that if the West stays out of the fight, it'll turn into something uglier still.
The longer the conflict goes on, the more extreme people will become. So it's up to the West and the rest of the world if they want to help us to get rid of the Bashar. So it will be okay, or take us longer time, have a lot of people more killed, and people become more extremist. So for the West staying on the side, not helping, that's creating extremists.
The martyrdom of Mara's dead, more than 50 since the uprising began, is celebrated like that of thousands of others across Syria in videos that dwell relentlessly on the barbarity of the struggle. How long can talk of post-war reconciliation survive images like this? Even in war, Mara goes about its age-old occupations, farming and trading. But it's still digging graves for victims yet unknown.
يرجع لك بالدم